a little time. I think normally I would have tried to do a little state of the state with everybody out at the Big Ten Media Day, and I didn't do it. I didn't go. So I just thought it was a good time. There's people have been asking a lot of questions, some things I just thought we'd address, and then whatever questions. I've got quite a bit of stuff I want to run through, so that's why I've got some notes. I don't think I'm breaking any news today, but I guess I don't get to decide that. You do. But there's nothing major, I don't think, on my list. First, a couple things from last year that I want to talk about. Competitively, I think we had 5 sports in the top 10. Bowl champion, crown champion, a couple of Big Ten champions. It was a really good year competitively. A lot to celebrate. We also won off the field. We had a 3.46 department GPA, which is a record at Nebraska. Nobody talks about academics anymore, but internally we talk about academics all the time. So everybody's very proud of that. We had 11 more academic All-Americans last year. We also did some really good things financially. We set a record with 17,663 donors. We also passed $70 million in donations last year for the first time, another Nebraska record. So Tyler Kai and his crew did a remarkable job. And then the other area where I think no one compares to Nebraska from an attendance standpoint, 2 things that I've learned to look at here. One is the women's 4, and it's if you take the FBS schools and the sports that we all or almost all compete in, the women's 4, which is volleyball, softball, basketball, and soccer. Our attendance last year was 337,000 in the women's sports. That's second in the country, which is pretty remarkable. I think South Carolina was ahead of us. LSU was right behind us. And then the 7, if you expand it to include men's basketball, baseball, and football. So the 7 ticketed sports, we were at 1.3 million. That's 7th in the country, second in the Big Ten behind Ohio State. And I think 4 of the schools above us were 100,000 seat football stadiums. So 1.3 million in a population of a state with a population of 2 million is really remarkable. Just a credit to the fans. And I saw it from a distance, but my first full year of living it, I saw the power of the fan base. But the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason. So looking forward, a few things just in general. 1, 2 new coaches this year. Danny is everybody's very familiar with, but since Danny wasn't here at the start of the new school year. And then Breanne Hall coming in to coach women's golf, who will do a great job, did a great job at Illinois State. Look forward to her. And I haven't really talked publicly about Kyle Crooks, joining the team. We're going to have a lot of memories of Greg this year and a lot of things we'll talk about, but I am thrilled with Kyle. I'm thrilled that he was able to be recruited into the pool. I had a conversation, the last conversation before I met with him was Ian Eagle, who's really his mentor. And I have great respect for Ian and the things he said about him. And then when I met with Greg and talked to Greg in those last few months, and we talked about his successor and what I should look for in that. And, he talked a lot about humility, and I think that's really important in the state of Nebraska. And Kyle has great humility, but he also talked about relationships and how important the relationships were with coaches and kids. And Kyle, I see him at almost every practice. He's starting to build those relationships. So couldn't be happier with him. Aramark coming in to take over concession sales and alcohol, which is going to be a big transition in the stadium. We had a little bit of a trial run during the scrimmage last Saturday night, and everything went as smoothly as it could be. They've invested about $7 million in capital inside the stadium, kitchens, and different concession ways to distribute concessions, really to enhance the fan experience as much as possible. Fully mobile ticketing in the stadium, and we're instituting the no reentry policy. And, both of those things will cause consternation. I understand that. I think our group has done a really good job of trying to make it as seamless for our fans as is going to be possible. And I talked about it a little bit. I think some might have seen there was a World Herald piece this morning on a deal I did in Omaha yesterday. Internally, security is a big focus of our year. Last year, we put the Evolve technology in at the entrances. We didn't do it every place, some back entrances, and we're doing that this year. And we spent a lot of time studying security, One, with the inclusion of alcohol in the stadium, and two, there's just a lot of things I think some of us that were new noticed last year that maybe not our best practice. And so you won't see most of it. We will be between 100 and 110 uniformed officers this year at a home game. Last year we were at 75. We'll probably increase that again next year. But while we're in a place where security sometimes is an afterthought, I don't think in this day and age we can do anything less than best practice and anything less than have a secure and safe environment to the extent that we can do. We are hosting 5 Big Ten championships this year, both gymnastics, both outdoor track and field, and baseball. The track facility is progressing well. Should be done by mid-fall. I think it's something we're all going to be very, very proud of when it's done. Seat about 2,500 people, and we'll bring in temporary bleachers for the Big Tens. We are moving forward with plans to expand Cook Arena. First time I've been able to formally call that, I think, in a session. When the winter sports season is over, we will take the plywood that's back behind the benches in my east, west, north, south. I'm not all the way there yet, but take that plywood out. The treads from the old basketball arena are still there. Put new seats on those. I think the capacity right now, I think we'll get to 10-2. But it give or take a few. And then the lower bowl will be replaced with seat backs, with the exception of one end where the students will be. That means all the students will go from the 4 corners to one end. And there's a reseating in volleyball. So a lot of work will take place inside of the arena at the end of the spring sports. Last year, I think internally, one of our big focuses was nutrition and getting Flick off the ground. This year, it's the events planning, and getting we've hired 2 of a 3-person events crew, special events division, if you will. We have to use our venues. One, a 10,000 seat venue. We have PBA at 16, and then we obviously have the stadium. We have to start thinking entrepreneurially. The days are past when we can just rely on, hey, there's 7 home football games and we're going to shutter the stadium. We have to find ways to generate revenue. And I know everybody's tired of hearing about it, but we have to generate revenue outside of raising ticket prices. And one of the ways to do it are capitalize on the venues. One, it's also great for the community. It's heads in beds, but we have to start thinking heads in beds. We have to start thinking and acting like we're a convention visitors bureau. We can't be passive any longer and say, I hope somebody calls us and wants to perform in our stadium. So the idea of this events group is to actively pursue events. And we're having the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce in the west side I'm speaking to in a couple of weeks. And I'm talking events from that to stadium shows to concerts to other events. And that's what this group is there to do. I know right now they're just getting here, but we're engaged with 3 different potential events for calendar year 26. We aren't going to see anything in the stadium this fall, but it takes time. Most of these are a year, 18 months in advance. So that's a big focus for us. We recruit coaches, we recruit kids. We have to recruit everything, and not just passively sit by. A lot of people are interested, speaking of the stadium and where the Memorial Stadium project is at. I would tell you status quo. A couple of things. When I say we're continuing to plan, in a normal time, a stadium project like this, all of this work would be done without anyone knowing we're doing it. But the fact that the project was out there in the public, approved to some degree in planning by the board, I think everybody's waited for the next step. We're continuing, basically looking at east, west, north, and south in totality. This week, the chancellor sent a note out talking about the structural deficit at the university. The president's spoken about some of the system-wide financial issues. There's going to be a lot of trauma ahead. We're not going to take anything to the board for their approval, and I don't know when we will. But the time is not now, in the midst of what I would almost level some degree of crisis. on campus, consternation at the very least, crisis at the very most. Now's not the time to debut a big capital project. But we're going to continue to work on the plans. We're going to continue to fine-tune the financial model. And at whatever point in time I think we can comfortably take it back, we'll take it back. But otherwise, I would just say status quo. One last thing, maybe. Husker Athletics is a part of a much larger enterprise here, and sometimes we forget about it. This is our life, and I say our life, mine, our staffs, our athletes, and everything else. But we have to never forget we're part of a bigger enterprise, and we're part of the university. And about the time that the tail tries to wag the dog's going to bite it. And we need to understand what we do and how we support the university in general, and other things that have to be done besides just athletics. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about House, and maybe a lot of bit about House, to fill everybody in on where we're at. First, Nebraska, we are paying the full $20.5 million that's permitted by the settlement this year to the athletes, or committing that to the athletes. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. 4 sports, football, men's and women's basketball, and volleyball, are allocated a cash pool from that 20.5. And I'm not going to talk about the numbers and I don't think anybody in the country is talking about the numbers that's going sport by sport. I don't think anything's out of probably whack with what happens in most places. When the coaches get that pool of money, they decide who gets what and how much, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, whatever the contract terms are with the individual athletes. It harkens back to the days of Northern Iowa when football was an equivalency, and did you give an athlete a half a scholarship or quarter scholarship? That's what this is. Coaches have to make those decisions. That's why we have GMs. That's why coaches, everybody's moved to the GMs, because there is now a strategy in how are we, where are we allocating those resources. Not to mention the fact that nearly every athlete has an agent. And the head football coach cannot be expected to deal with 80 agents. And that's the role of the general manager right now. Soccer, wrestling, baseball, softball, men's and women's track and field have additional scholarships. And I bring that up because the additional scholarships count against that 20.5 total. 16 in total this year. That number is going to grow. I think the long term as to how do scholarships count against the cap, we've made the conscious decision here to allocate cash and not allocate scholarships before cash, with the exception of those sports. Where did the 20.5 come from here? A combination of reducing our operating expenses. We eliminated 27 positions. Starting last fall, when this looked imminent, we held a lot of positions and just didn't fill them. At the end of the day, we eliminated, I believe, 7 active positions, and then the other 20 positions had been vacant, and we just eliminated them off our books. That was $2 to $3 million of savings in those positions. We reprioritized expenses. And it was probably good timing, with a lot of us knew, just to go through everything we did. And, this may be the last budgetary item to be added, but I would tell you it's probably the first in priority. And that means everything else had to be reevaluated and looked at. What do we do? What do we not do? How are things going to be different? So that's where the savings were. The flip side, from a revenue standpoint, obviously the sale of alcohol, the changes with Aramark, those decisions were made knowing that this financial liability was going to be on our books this year. I think by the time the advertising pieces and everything else is added, we hope to be around $5 million positive with what we're doing from that side of it. Big Ten distributions, Tom Osborne's going to get credit for a lot of things. He'll never get enough credit for bringing us to the Big Ten. And that has allowed us to do some things. And that gain in resources from our development staff. Those things allowed us to not cut any budgets. We didn't cut any sport budget. We did some things administratively that probably needed to be done that nobody will ever see. But it also allowed us to protect the financial model. I want to talk about the Nebraska model for a second. I would tell you, now having been here about 18 months, the number one job that I have, and all of you think it's winning. And when I say I mean I and my team, our department. It's winning games. Now, faculty will tell you it's graduation and grade point averages, and the CFO will tell you it's balancing the budget. But the number one priority is protecting the financial model that I walked into, that had been developed over the years, a financial model that's possible. Because of those attendance numbers I talked about earlier, that's why the financial model is viable here. And that financial model is this. We don't take any student fees. We don't take any institutional subsidies. We don't take any state dollars. We pay full rack rate for scholarships. There's no out-of-state differential waivers. And we pay, the last 2 years and this year again, $5 million back to the university as a subsidy. That financial model has to be protected at all costs. It's that financial model that allowed us to do essentially nothing draconian to get to the 20.5. And that 20.5 is growing 4% a year. That cost is going to continue. It allowed us to not raise ticket prices. It allowed us to not reduce the subsidy. It allowed us to keep budgets whole through the 24 sport lineup. That financial model is the fuse that's going to light whatever success we have. And so I will tell you, we will protect it at all cost. A little bit on the collective, and I want to go back and talk about a couple more things here with NIL and NIL Go and what everything means. I've been asked a lot about the collective. A lot of institutions have changed their collective. Their collectives has rolled in-house. First, and I've said it, Matt said it, it cannot be overstated the appreciation that we need to give to Tom, Sean Peed, and to those who are behind 1890. Because they've done everything we've asked and we've needed. Whatever position and whatever trajectory that Matt's been able to take, football in particular, has been because of what the collective has allowed us to do. As we've talked through with the collective, what do these new rules mean? Their message to me is, tell us what you need us to be, and that is what we will be. The days of the collective collecting cash and distributing it as if it's NIL, but it's pay for play, those days are gone. That's the settlement stopped that. They can still do facilitate NIL deals. They can still take, and 1890 has a lot of branded products, and they can still enter into NIL contracts with athletes to promote their branded products. And until we know, really, and you're starting to see a lot of discussion about it, what is going to happen with NIL with pre-enrollment, with high school students, what can collectives do before they get here, which is not necessarily contemplated by the settlement, but needs to be contemplated by anti-circumvention rules that are being developed right now. Until we know that, I don't think we really know what exactly the full role of the collective is going forward. I would tell you I would expect it, dependent upon the rules, it may diminish, it may reduce, and it may eliminate the role of the collective. We're really focusing right now on 24, 36, 48 months from now, what structure do we need to have in place to optimize our chances to win? And whether it's a revised version of the collective or whether the collective will get a new breath of life through how the settlement's operationalized, that's what we're working on right now. As far as the settlement in general, I will tell you, I would urge our fans, as I have urged our coaches, do not get frustrated with the growing pains associated with CSC, NIL Go, all the things that come with the settlement. It's like, this thing is 6 weeks old, and it's no different than a freshman showing up. Peak performance does not happen day one. And I think a lot of people had this unreasonable expectation that day one, everything was going to run as efficiently as it's ever going to run. I've been thrilled with everything that's happened, and I'm a governance nerd. I think they're doing a great job. There's a learning curve, and some people are going to embrace everything, and some people are going to fight everything, which makes it just that much harder for them. It needs to work. It has to work for the sake of the enterprise. It will if, and I say the enterprise, we, if we give it the chance, if we find the patience and tolerance to let this thing find its equilibrium, it'll work great. We've never demonstrated patience and tolerance. As soon as something happens that we don't like, we've tried to regulate it into a different direction. We just got to go through some growing pains, and that may prove to be, there may be some inequities, but I will tell you, I will take Nebraska's problems before anybody else's problems as we go through that. And that goes right back to the financial model. That goes right back. Everybody asks the role and the importance of the fans. It's showing up right now. It is showing up in rare form. Okay. We've had 39 NIL deals submitted to the NIL Go clearinghouse. 20 of those have been approved. 4 of them just went in, so we haven't had a chance to get them back. The deals have been in range from $600 to $40,000. We've had 3, I think, above $35,000. Not every deal that an athlete has been submitted yet. It's up to the athlete to submit the deals, so that number will continue to grow. There's 15 deals that have not been, there's been no decision. We haven't had any deals rejected, but there are 15 sitting there awaiting a response. All 15 are deals between collectives and student athletes. And that probably is tied into the kind of back and forth over what the collectives were going to be able to do and what they weren't going to be able to do. So we're expecting some answers. Most of those deals are small, under $10,000 of value. Most of them are not cash, but they're in kind. So we'll see how those deals play out. But honestly, I've been thrilled with everything that's happened with NIL Go, I think it's exceeding expectations for 6 weeks in. And then kind of wrapping up, for me, I talked a little bit about the track and the arena project. I do want to talk about a couple of other capital projects. It is hard to believe that 12 months ago we were moving into OLC. You talk about the differences in the football program this year versus last year. They were still trying to find light switches and plug-ins in OLC. The nutrition program that I would tell you is a badge of honor that we should all wear very proudly. They hadn't even served their first full set of meals at this time 12 months ago. So we've come a long, long way. You talk about the differences. That's a huge difference, I think, that just operationally behind the program. You saw the grass fields. We've talked about them. The first time in 30 years. We put new grass on top, but there were still rocks that were coming up and everything else. So it was dug down 36 inches and rebuilt. It's rebuilt in a way that we can turn the fields a couple of different directions. That project's complete. New turf in the stadium, the same turf that's inside the Hawks indoor. The north scoreboard is new. It may not look new, but everything had to come out, and I think you saw last year it fritzed on us a couple of times during games. So that's been replaced. Verizon has made a $20 million investment in cellular service in the stadium. No promises that everybody's going to be able to stream other games when they walk in, like they would if they were at home on their Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi will be a part of the stadium project eventually. We're not doing Wi-Fi until the stadium project is done, but we expect this to be a huge upgrade for the fan experience. Golf, bowling, and rifle, there's noise you hear upstairs sometimes and sometimes not. Golf, bowling, and rifle locker rooms. Believe it or not, they didn't really have locker rooms. They do now. And golf will have a men's and women's hitting space and a putting space because, as I remember coming back to the Midwest, golf is not a 12-month-a-year outdoor sport here. And so as much as we can do here for those sports, we want to continue to do. Hope the soundproofing is good enough that we don't hear balls hitting all season, but I think we're in a really good place moving into the year. And the last thing I will tell you is we just had a head coaches meeting 2 days ago. And I think every coach in this department would tell you expectations, competitive expectations for this year are equal to or greater than they were last year. And frankly, that's all I can ever ask for. That's all any of us can ever ask for our programs. So with that said, that's some things I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure you have some questions. No questions, I'm out of here. No.
What relationship, just bottom line, what relationship does football winning have to protecting that financial model?
You can argue the last 20 years football maybe hasn't won at that level and the financial model still works. I do not think that is infinite. We have to win. And, if you're doing this to not win, if you're not in it to win it, get out. We've invested a lot of resources in football in the last couple of years. Investing resources not to compete where we were, but to compete where we expect to be. We've done it in personnel. We've done it in infrastructure. We've done it in every way we can. Football needs to win. I want 24 sports to win. I want 24 sports to be in a position to win a conference championship. But I'm just rough estimate now. Our budget, $225 million, give or take. The Big Ten and CFP monies, let's just say it's about 100. That's 93% football related. The donations, that's $70 million. Not all of it's football, but I would tell you at least 85% of it's football. A home game in football is worth $10 million. So take 10 plus 90, pretty close, and you look at that revenue model and say how much of that's attributable to football. The vast majority of it. Volleyball will be on or about the Mendoza line from a financial standpoint. And that's not because volleyball didn't generate money. It generates money at a magnitude and a delta above anybody else in the country. But we invest a lot in volleyball as well. But football's the engine in every way. And it's important that you win.
So is your expectations for football this season, is it as simple as saying you want it to be better than last season?
In the goals sessions that I have with our coaches, what are my goals? What are your goals? I have never given anybody a competitive goal. Too many factors that cannot be controlled. But and this is, I know this is very subjective. Like, I don't sit in my office. I couldn't call a play. I couldn't recruit a player. But you can tell a lot about where a program is at by being amongst it and within that program every day. At practice, Haven's at practice every day. I'm there 2-3 times a week. I'm over in the football offices. I'm walking around. I'm in the locker room. They're coming to the house on Sunday for a hog roast. To have great success, the culture that needs to be in place for it's there. I don't know that it's always been there, but it's there right now. I want to win at a level that Nebraska has seen before. You don't go from where we've been to that today. So in some ways, you're right. There has to be progress. Like, I talk a lot about building blocks. We get into the bowl game, as absurd as it seems, given our last decade, that was a foundational block that needed to happen before we could take the next step. Winning the game was a foundational block. The next one's going to be that fourth quarter drive, right? That everybody talks about what hasn't happened, and then we can finally start talking about what has happened. So, there's a lot of things that however the record turns out, I think whether the program is progressing or whether the program isn't progressing.
Troy, although you're not providing information, numbers on the breakdown of the rev share money going to individual sports, can you shed some light on how that process works?
Yeah.
And also, is there administrative oversight, or is it entirely up to the individual sports on how to distribute their cash within their programs?
Yeah, good. Yeah. So we met with, about a year ago, met with every coach. Jonathan Bateman, who is what I would say is our guru, right? He was the NIL guru. He became and I don't know what exactly the terminology is, but every campus has one person that's kind of the point into the system, and he is that person. He and I met with the sport administrator and every head coach and talked about what did they think they needed. And again, we're starting from nothing. Nobody knows what anybody else is doing. Normally, coach will say, I need what they have. But they had to really show someone that, what do you think you need? And so we took that and then had another meeting a little bit later and kind of got the coaches' input. My mindset coming in changed from talking to the coaches. I thought we were going to have one program and one plan, one size fits all. I would tell you we probably have 24 different models for what does football need, because it's different than baseball. Baseball needs scholarships maybe before they need rev share dollars. So there's a lot of that the coaches had to decide. Then once we make the allocation of the revenue, it's no different than allocating budget dollars to them. Here's how much you get this year. The coach, just like a scholarship, the coach decides how much somebody should have. Then the coach and the sport administrator make that decision. It goes to Jonathan. Jonathan makes sure it from a compliance standpoint that are we within the 20.5? Are we within the number that's been allocated before we submit it? Does everything work? Everyone who's getting $1 in cash from the rev share has to sign a contract. It's a contract that's common across the Big Ten. My guess is this contract will be common throughout the A4. They sign that contract, and then it gets to me. And ultimately, then I sign off on the contract.
Did you add scholarships in the sports also that got rev share?
No.
Cash that? Okay.
No. They could use those dollars for scholarships if they chose. But we didn't say, here's money plus scholarships. It's here's a pool of money. If you decide you want to add scholarships. So if Matt wanted to be at 86, he wanted to be at 83. He has that flexibility, whatever he thought his needs were. The question for Matt was, if you have $1, is it best invested in your two deep, or is it best invested in your 87th player?
You expect that?
And those are hard decisions, but those are decisions that every coach had to make.
Do you expect that the ruling will stay the same on the scholarships counting against the 20.5 in the future?
I don't think there'll be unanimous support to change it. Much like everything, this is a very provincial world, and people only want to do what is in their best interests. It is in Nebraska's best interest for that to change. We'll add 125 scholarships tomorrow, if that changes. It may not, because that's because of the financial model. If the financial model is not in place at another school, it may not be in their interest, and they may not want to do it.
Troy, the front loading with NIL was pretty out of control this year before July 1. How do you see those who work within the industry seeing that self-correct after a year of this goes through when you can't really get away with what people did this year?
Well, I think some people are betting on the fact that since it's happened, there's no way you go backwards. That's when I talk a lot about this has to hold. This has to work. It has to for that reason. Don't think that money that was coming in front loading and the money that was there for NIL the last 2-3 years, that was not an endless stream. And it's not just here, but it's across the country. Donors, there was some donor weariness to this. And now the fact that we're actually paying them, I think some donors are questioning, well, why am I writing a check if you're paying them? The biggest question, Sean, is what are we going to do with high school recruiting? Because the front loading has moved to high school recruiting. Because if you can give anybody anything right now, and it's unregulated by the terms of the settlement, it is probably circumvention of the settlement. And I hear various things about what's happening, some of it true, some of it not true. Probably shouldn't repeat it because I don't trust a lot of what I hear unless I see it, to be sure. But I do know there's a lot of money going pre-enrollment right now as a way to circumvent I would say it's moved from recruitment and retention to recruitment. How that's handled, there's a lot of us that have made suggestions on what we should do from a regulatory standpoint. We're waiting. And this gets back to, I think there's a lot of frustration. Why don't we have that answer right now? Well, it's because it's brand new. It's going to take a little bit of time. And that's where we have to have patience, and we can be frustrated that this is happening at that school or this will allegedly happen at that school. But we're going to get a set of rules to deal with, and then we're going to go forward and we're going to optimize what we can do within that set of rules.
Troy, when you evaluate coaches now, how much do you take into account, or do you take into account where they are at with what they can pay their players, with what you can pay your players versus what other programs can pay?
Well, I stand up here and I'm not telling you what other programs are paying, right? I don't know what other programs are paying. I do know this: everybody lies. Well, we're doing X, and that school's doing Y. Are they really? And a lot of the numbers you see right now are, as Sean said, a result of front loading. Money that came in, so this roster may be X. It isn't X as a part of the 20.5. It's impossible. It's impossible. If you want to have a thriving football program, then you don't have a $10 million basketball chunk out of your 20.5. So I think, the one thing about no transparency, and we all try to keep this provincial because we think there's a competitive piece to it, is that we're liable to misinformation that's flowing around. Here's at the end of the day, one thing's still true, no matter what the number is, and if they took the cap off and we could spend as much as we wanted, it still comes down to, do you get $1.25 of value out of the dollar of spend? Or do you get 75 cents value out of the dollar you spend? And so, in some ways, having the dollar is one thing, but what you get out of it's another. You're talking about evaluating coaches? I've told the coaches, at the end of the year when we have our evaluations, we're going to go through the allocation of rev share dollars, and we're going to talk about ROI. Was the ROI on this allocation good? Was the ROI on that allocation good? And it's going to impact what happens the following year. So coaches have always been accountable to budgets. And in some ways, if you missed on a scholarship, we missed on a scholarship. If you miss on a $250,000 rev share allocation, it's a big deal now. So again, back to the role of the GM. Why are we spending so much on GMs and adding that personnel? The stakes are really high right now. The $20.5 million, that is about 1.5 times greater than the scholarship budget of the entire department. So it's a big number.
Troy,
I
can
do
you
want to
just,
speak to, I do want to speak to basketball competitiveness though.
Yeah.
so for the Nebraska women's and men's teams, they are paired with a football program that's getting a lot of that revenue share money. There's private schools that don't have football programs in the Big East, including a rival up the interstate. They don't have to deal with that. How do the Nebraska men and women's teams compete with schools that don't have to deal with football revenue?
Well, I think historically, those who have spent the most have not won the most. Now, you have to spend reasonably, right? You have to make certain investments. But if your decision as to whether we can have success is whether I have the largest NIL budget, there are going to be a lot of places that aren't your place. And I think basketball coaches are challenged right now that have big football programs because of what they see in the programs that don't have the football expense, if you will, of the NIL. They don't also have the revenue driving in. Very few basketball-only schools are self-sufficient. And so, how and if they're able to drive enough revenue to provide numbers of a magnitude, we'll see over time. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. There's a lot of stories out there, right? But fact of the matter is, one donor could write that check, donate to the university, and there you have it. It is different, and this sounds cold and hard, but if you're at a school with major college football, there's a cost to major college football. We talked about the revenue that it drives the entire department. The investment in major college football is the priority. Finding a way to support basketball at the level it needs to be supported. When I talk about football and basketball, if you look at the percentage of revenue, just take revenue now at the University of Nebraska, and this is one of the exercises we went through, how much revenue of our $225 million is driven, when you can drive it by sport, how much is driven by sport. And you know, the percentage of money that's being allocated to basketball versus football is much higher than the percentage of revenue being driven by basketball versus football.
Troy, what kind of update can you share on ticket sales ahead of the regular season opener, and just what kind of an opportunity is that for this program?
I know Michigan sold out, and I'm looking at Haven back here because I haven't had an update, but for the most part, here's what happens. We have 66,000 season tickets out. We have about 7,000 students. That gets you to 69. We have to give 3,000 to the opponent. We have the band. We have other things in there. So it leaves a very small number of tickets that can be sold for every game. What those tickets normally sell 2 weeks prior. You know, some games will sell faster than that. And then the Monday before a game, the 3,000 that the visiting team get returned to us if they didn't sell them all. And nobody sells them all. And then it's a matter of game week. We often have tickets. And that sellout streak's a sellout streak. And, you know, one of the things, I didn't mention this, our ticket office, we've been very passive. Hey, come buy our tickets, because everybody came and bought the tickets. Now we're actually trying to sell tickets. And the sellout streak's not going to be threatened. But the only game I know where everything is out right now is Michigan.
How about as it relates to Kansas City, the opener?
I think 66 is, what's that? 66,000 is the number that they've sold. Near as we can tell, about 6,000 of those were what I would call Ohio, Kentucky type Cincinnati addresses. Is kind of what we've been told. That doesn't mean it's 60,000 versus 6,000, but you know, I said it yesterday. It's a virtual home game, but we think we're about 60, and I think they expect to sell out before game day. Thursday night, 8 o'clock, doesn't help that in the stadium on Labor Day weekend, but we think we'll be close, especially if the weather week of turns well.
Hey, Troy, what about Friday night games in the future? The Big Ten kind of slimmed down the schedule, it looked like this year, as far as the number of Friday night games. You guys had a home game last year, you got a road game this year. What's the big picture view, and do you envision you guys will ever have to host one of these again?
We'll have to host one of them again.
Next year, possibly?
I don't expect one next year. I really don't. You know, all bets are off. I expected our Friday night game to not be at Minnesota this year. So I'm sure we'll have one a year. Obviously, when the Iowa game is here, we'll never have another Friday. But I expect over the life of the current contract, so through 32, probably 2 more. Yeah.
Colorado ADs talk about the possibility of playing Nebraska in football every year. What are your thoughts on that?
So a couple things. With the exception of what we did with Tennessee as relates to the football schedule, the schedule here, and I haven't really touched it, is virtually complete through 2032. We have, I think, 28 Arizona. Arizona is 28 and 31 in a home and home. I don't know which is which. Oklahoma is 29-30 home and home. And then we have Oklahoma State right behind that. So, you know, a perfect schedule today. Until if the CFP looks different and says you need to schedule this way, or the Big Ten does something different, is a home and home against an A4, by a G6 and an FCS. And that's kind of the way it's set up. I do not expect to touch the schedule, to make any scheduling decisions until after the stadium is done and after the CFP decides what maybe its model is going to be. And you know, it's like basketball. You have to schedule to get into the postseason. You have to. And I don't care if we haven't been close to it. That's where we want to be. That's how we have to schedule. So we'll schedule in what is optimal to get into the postseason.
Troy, on the CFP, Tony Petitti mentioned in Vegas that Big Ten wouldn't support a model that gave more influence to the committee? You're sort of in a unique position because you're going to be on that committee now. I guess, how do you sort of view?
Yeah, I joked with Tony. He's never said that before, and I'm on the committee now, and now he's worried about the committee. So, and one, I'm trying to stay away from it just because it is a unique place. The one thing I will say, Tony has the room. Nothing Tony's saying does not have the I would say the unanimous, if maybe there's an outside voice once in a while, but near unanimous support of the athletic directors. And so, Tony's job is to fight for the Big Ten, and he does a great job. And I talked about us needing to be entrepreneurial. We're asking him to be entrepreneurial. Talked about the revenue, the ways to generate new revenues. We can't raise ticket prices much here. We can do the things we're doing, but the delta in revenue either is fundraising or Big Ten. And so we're asking him to grow that to keep an advantage over everybody else. He's doing a great job.
Were you surprised to see John Cook take another job?
No, I'm thrilled. John and I talked about it probably 2 or 3 times over the last couple of months. Volleyball's better with John in it.
Can you, on that note?
I don't want him coaching in college anyplace.
Yeah. On that note, can you speak to what's going to happen less than 2 weeks from now, down here at PBA, and just what you've seen from Danny over the last several months?
So the cool thing, Danny's practice, everything is a competition. Everything. And I love that. I mean, whether it's serving drills or she's keeping score of everything, and just that mindset. She has a wonderful way about her. She has a lot of talent, and there's curse and a blessing, right, in dealing with that much and that depth of talent. But she's been awesome. I can't wait. Everybody here sees great volleyball, but everybody here waits for Wisconsin and Penn State and some of those matches, and they come once or twice. That is going to be a wonderful 2-3 days for, talk about our fan base. There is no better place for volleyball in the country than Nebraska. So it's cool that everybody's going to get to see not just Nebraska, but the depth of great volleyball.
Speaking of revenue generation, would you like to see LVB, Nebraska, or the Supernovas in Vanny playing a match? Obviously, they'd split the revenue, but.
We're going to use the building in any way we can. The one thing about all these revenue generation items in the stadium and everything else, we cannot take away from our programs. The challenge for like the volleyball season, the professional volleyball season, is when it happens, we have gymnastics, and wrestling, and not just competitions, but that's where their practices are often. So the availability of the building's really tight in the winter, outside of a day or two. But I'm open to absolutely anything. It's not something John and I have talked about, but if John calls, I mean, his name is on the arena now, so we'll have to listen.
Hey Troy, with Aramark coming in, it ended high schoolers being able to work in the stadium. Just what was that decision-making process of having it be 18 up and a conversation with Aramark?
Well, one, alcohol changed a lot of things. Even if we didn't have Aramark, the sale of alcohol was going to change how we were able to staff from a legal standpoint. Aramark's corporate policy is 18s, and then they have gotten permission for the nonprofits that come in and work the stands to have 16s working. So there'll be 16s in there as well. I got to tell you, I walked through last year, and you see my kids are 12 and 11, and there's 12 and 11-year-olds selling pop in the hallways, and as we move to cashless, and it's just part of the evolution that makes it make less sense to do it the way we did before. We'll still have hawkers, but their corporate policy on age, and it makes a lot of sense.
Troy, going back to John Cook for a second, I think
Yeah.
when he retired, you had mentioned that he was potentially looking at taking some sort of role in the athletic department in the future with the new job. Is that off the table now?
No. The role John's going to have with us, one is wisdom and guidance. Two is really his help on the fundraising side, particularly as we get some of the projects both in the arena and with the stadium up and going. Those things do not interfere, and that's why he reached out to me. Is this going to be a problem? Because if it is, I won't do it. And I said, no. In fact, I think it's better for us, actually, for him to continue to be involved in the game and his presence.
Is there a target number of extra events in the stadium you envision in a couple of years?
No, right now it's 7. There's only one way to go. The next step for me is I need to meet with the city leaders and talk more about, because some events, not concerts, but some events require, almost a bid fee. One of the things we're not equipped to do is to back events financially. Now, we may build a revenue pool through bringing other events in that we can do that. But one of the things that CBBs and sports commissions do is pay a bid fee to get things to come into the city. So we need to figure out how to work together to do that. That'll decide maybe how many really are viable and how many are not. I've talked about weddings, and that may not seem like much, but if in a revised stadium there's an open air space for 2,000 people to have a wedding, pretty cool. So how we can use, and part of the integration of the plans as we develop it, is how can we use this for other things, not just an 80,000 seat football game, but how does 2,500 seats work in here?
Anything else for Troy? Thanks a lot, Troy.
Thanks, appreciate you.
Thank you.